Shalom. My name is Moreh Ishiyah Yisrael from the House of Israel in Cincinnati, Ohio, 2330 Kemper Lane, bringing to you in 40 minutes or less. In 40 minutes or less, I will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt the word of Yahweh. Who is this Yahweh? Yahweh is the creator of the heaven, the earth, the sea, and all that is therein. Yahweh is the Elohim of our fathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yisrael, whom you may know as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yahweh is our judge. Yahweh is our lawgiver. Yahweh is our king, who will save us. Shalom, and welcome to another program of 40 minutes or less. In today's program, we will deal with the subject matter, lesson number 33, Yahweh's purpose of 7. Of course, 7 in the scriptures, this number is very unique and different than all the numbers, period, in the scriptures and outside the scriptures. Its purpose is rooted in the very thing that Yahweh said about this number. And we're going to read what Yahweh said about this number 7. But this is a certain time. And as we've been bringing to you, to every time, there's a purpose under heaven. And there's a season to every time under heaven. And if you want to know Yahweh, you must come to the understanding of knowing 7. Yahweh made this number, this time, so unique that it is the only number that Yahweh would actually give a name to. And it's called the Shabbat. Of course, in English, it is called the Sabbath. So whether it is the 7th day, the 7th year, the Sabbath of years, 49 years, it is still called a Sabbath. And let's see what this time is purpose for. And then I will give you 10 witnesses to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt what Yahweh said is true. Here in the book of Genesis, the 2nd chapter, this is where we will begin. In the book of Genesis 2, this is what it says, starting at the very first verse. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the 7th day, Elohim ended his work which he had made. He rested on the 7th day from all the work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which Elohim created and made. So the Almighty thought this day, purposed this day for not just rest. He blessed it, he sanctified it, and he ended his work on this day. We brought to you the purpose, Yahweh purpose of 4, which represents his praise. Yahweh purpose of 5, which represent his increase. The first thing he ever said, bless, use that word. Of course, Yahweh purpose of 6 is a double blessing. And then now we're dealing with Yahweh purpose of 7. He named it, and as a result of naming it, he ended his work. He blessed it. He sanctified it, and he rested on it. And these are all the things that Yahweh wanted us to do. And we're going to show you that. Because that's what the 7 actually is purpose for. And here it is. Many people will pass this day without fulfilling what this is purpose for. Some people are born the 7th and don't even realize what their birth represents. In the book of Isaiah 58, one more thing before I show you these 10 witnesses. I just want you to see how unique this time is. In the book of Isaiah 58, this is what it says in the 13th verse. If thou turn away thy foot from the Shabbat or from the Sabbath, it don't even have to say the 7th day. All it has to do is say the Sabbath, and you should know exactly what it's speaking of, because it's the only day that he named. From doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call the Shabbat a delight, holy of Yahweh, honorable, and shall honor him, not doing thy own ways, nor finding thy own pleasure, nor speaking thy own words. Then shalt thou delight thyself in Yahweh, and I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Yaakov thy father, for the mouth of Yahweh has spoken it. And so we're going to show you, since you can't do your pleasure, and he wants you to call it delight, honorable, and honor him, and not doing your own ways and finding your own pleasure, nor speaking thy own words, because your purpose is your pleasure. And so Yahweh wants you to be caught up in his pleasure, and particularly on this day, and wants you to be caught up in his and not your own. And these are the 10 witnesses that I want you to see to prove beyond of a shadow of a doubt what you are to do on the only day, the only time that Yahweh will give you a definitive name that actually represents him. And all you have to do is ask yourself, are you fulfilling Yahweh's pleasure that he purposed on the 7th? Here it is. Number 1, in the book of Exodus 23. This is where we're going to start. This is our first witness. Exodus 23. In the book of Exodus 23, and we're going to read the 10th and 11th verse. Watch what it says. In 6 years thou shalt sow thy land, and shalt gather in the fruits thereof. But the 7th year thou shalt let it rest, and lie still, that the poor of thy people may eat, and what they leave the beasts of the field shall eat. In like manner thou shalt deal with thy vineyard and with thy olive yard. And so the Almighty making it crystal clear that in the 7th year would allow the land to rest. And why? Because the 7th represents rest. And not only it was to rest, but it was a day that was blessed to yield this blessing even to the beasts of the field, and to the poor of thy people. So it was set apart, sanctified, set apart from any other day, any other year, any other time. That's what sanctification means. It's set apart. And the 7 is the end. It represents the end. And not just the 7th year. Watch the 12th verse, which is the second witness. 6 days thou shalt do thy work. And on the 7th day, we were talking about the 7th year, but now this is the 7th day, thou shalt rest. Who is thou? You, that thy ox and thy ass may rest. Yahweh even wanted your beast to rest. And the son of thy handmaid and the stranger may be refreshed. So this is not just your responsibility to garner this rest. Yahweh wanted even your beast to rest. He wanted your servants to rest on this day. And why? Because as we read in the book of Genesis, the 2nd chapter, Yahweh himself rested. Yahweh himself brought everything to an end. Yahweh himself blessed this day and sanctified it. And he wants you to learn to do the same. It is only one day, one time that Yahweh will have you to do this. And it's at the 7th. The third witness is in the book of Deuteronomy, the 15th chapter. So you can see no matter where we're going to law, no matter where we're going the word of Yahweh, he will not have you to deviate from what the 7th is purpose for. In the book of Deuteronomy, the 15th chapter, starting at the very first verse, at the end of every 7 years, thou shalt make a release. And this is the manner of the release. Every creditor that lendeth honor to his neighbor shall release it. He shall not exact it of his neighbor or of his brother, because it is called Yahweh's release. Of a foreigner thou mayest exact it again, but that which is thine with thy brother, thy hand shall release. Save when there shall be no poor among you, for Yahweh shall greatly bless thee in the land which Yahweh giveth thee for an inheritance to who possess it. So here it is. Not only do Yahweh want you to rest, as we read, he wants your ox and your ass to rest, as we read. He wants your maidservant and your handmaid to rest. And who are your handmaids and your maidservants? These are people that are a part of your family. Even the stranger that is a part of your family, he wants everybody to rest. But not just rest from all their work. Yahweh wants you to even get rest even from all your debts. So in the 7th year, he even released the burden that you might have, even with your debts. And why? Because the 7th represents rest. It represents ultimately these things must come to an end. It represents the blessing of Yahweh and is sanctified for this time, meaning it's set apart. That's why it's done then. And that's every 7 years. Watch this. The fourth witness in this same Deuteronomy, the 15th chapter. talking about Yahweh purpose of 7. In the book of Deuteronomy 15, starting at verse 12. And if thy brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee, in other words, now these are your hired servants. You got maid servants and manservants that might not be your hired servants. They're part of your family. But now these are your hired servants. Be sold unto thee and serve thee 6 years. Then in the 7th year, thou shalt let him go free from thee. And when thou sendest him out free from thee, thou shalt not let him go away empty. Thou shalt furnish him liberally out of thy flock, out of thy floor, and out of thy winepress, of that wherewith Yahweh have blessed thee, thou shalt give unto him. And thou shalt remember that thou was a bondman in the land of Egypt, and Yahweh thy Elohim redeemed thee. Therefore I command thee this thing to do. And it shall be, if he say unto thee, I will not go away from thee, because he loved thee in thy house, because he is well with thee, because that might be your circumstance where he just don't want to go. But if he wants to go, it don't mean he hates you, but he fulfill his obligations, so you must bless him. So Yahweh even wants your hired servants to be able to freely leave and be blessed in the 7th year. Now, this 7th year, it might be different than the actual 7th year, because now it's talking about how long this person worked for you. The 5th witness is in the book of Deuteronomy, the 16th chapter. Just want you to see this. This is the law. And watch what it says. Deuteronomy 16. And we're going to start reading at the 9th verse. Because it don't matter if it's the 7th day, the 7th year, or 7 Sabbaths of years. They all are blessed, sanctified. They all represent the end, and they all represent rest. In the book of Deuteronomy 16 and 9, watch what it says. 7 weeks. And what is a week? A week in of itself is 7. And 7 is called the Shabbat. 7 weeks thou shalt number unto thee. Begin to number the 7 weeks from such time as thou beginnest to put the sickle to the corn. And Yahweh already let us know when to do that. He told us to do that tomorrow after the Shabbat. In other words, a full whole week. And thou shalt keep the feast of weeks. So not only we got a Shabbat that represents one of Yahweh's feasts that we must celebrate that actual day, but then we got a feast that represents all 7 days, called a week. And watch what it says. And what is a week? 7 days. And thou shalt keep the feast of weeks unto Yahweh thy Elohim with a tribute of a free will offering of thy hand, which thou shalt give unto Yahweh thy Elohim, according as Yahweh thy Elohim hath blessed thee. And thou shalt rejoice before Yahweh thy Elohim, thou and thy son, thy daughter, thy manservant, thy maidservant, the Levite that is within thy gates, the stranger, the fatherless, the widow that are among you, in the place which Yahweh thy Elohim had chosen to place his name there. And thou shalt remember that thou was a bondman in Egypt, and thou shalt observe and do these statutes. So here it is, once again, another week, a feast that represents something that is blessed. And of course, the Feast of Weeks is the feast that we will bring in all our crops from the land, an offering to Yahweh, the sixth witness. In this same Deuteronomy 16, it's starting at this 13th verse. Thou shalt observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days, even though it's not called the Feast of Weeks, where you numbering 7 days and 7 days. As a matter of fact, according to the scriptures, 7 weeks. This is called the Feast of Tabernacles, and you're celebrating 7 days, which is a week. After that, thou hast gathered in thy corn and thy wine. In other words, the various fruits that you will gather in the 7th month, at the end of the year. Watch what it says. And thou shalt rejoice in thy feast, thou, thy son, thy daughter, thy manservant, thy maidservant, the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, the widow that are within thy gates. 7 days thou shalt keep a solemn feast unto Yahweh thy Elohim in the place which Yahweh shall choose, because Yahweh thy Elohim shall bless thee in all thy increase and in all the works of thy hands. Therefore thou shalt surely rejoice. And of course, Yahweh is blessing us. What do you think the 7th represent? Something that Yahweh has blessed, something that Yahweh has sanctified, something that Yahweh has decided and purposed that this is a time of rest, a holy rest. And this is a time where Yahweh will bring things to an end. Whether it's a 7th day, whether it's the 7th year, whether it's the 7th week, or whether it is the Sabbath of years, Yahweh will bring it to an end, that you might rest, that he might bless you, and that he might sanctify you. Also, in the book of Deuteronomy 31, something else Yahweh wants you to know about the 7, that he has purposed, that you must honor it, you must delight in it, you must call it honorable, and you must honor him, not doing your own pleasure, not doing your own ways, not finding your own ways. Then you're able to delight yourself in Yahweh. Watch what it says in this 7th witness. In the book of Deuteronomy 31, in the 9th verse, and Moshe wrote this law and delivered it unto the priests, the sons of Levi, which bore the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, and unto all the elders of Israel. And watch what it says. And Moshe commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, in the solemnity of the year release in the Feast of Tabernacles, when all Israel come to appear before Yahweh your Elohim in the place which ye shall choose, thou shalt read this law before all Israel in their hearing. And why? Because this is a holy time. This is a sanctified time, a blessed time. And you notice it's at the end of the year. And what is that? The 7th month, because the 7th represents the end. And I'm going to show you that. Gather the people together, men, women, and children, and thy strangers that is within thy gates, that they may hear, that they may learn, and that and fear Yahweh your Elohim, and observe to do all the words of this law. That's what Yahweh wants you to learn. And you can't learn this without learning to fear Yahweh and understanding the seventh, the eighth witness. Watch this in the book of Leviticus 25. And all we've been showing you is the law. Leviticus 25. In the book of Leviticus 25, this is what it says, starting at the first verse. And Yahweh spake unto Moshe in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying to them, When you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Shabbat unto Yahweh. 6 years thou shalt sow thy field. 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard and gather in the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Shabbat of rest unto the land, a Shabbat for Yahweh. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard. That which groweth of his own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of thy vine and dress. For it is a year of rest unto the land. And the Shabbat of the land shall be meat for you, for thee, for thy servant, for thy maid, for thy hired servant, for thy stranger that sojourner with thee, for thy cattle, for the beasts of thy land, shall all the increase thereof be meat. And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee. 7 times 7 years, and the space of 7 Sabbaths a year shall be unto thee 49 years. Then thou shalt cause the trumpet of Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month, in the day of atonement, and ye shall make the trumpet sound throughout all your land, and ye shall hallow the 50th year, proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. That's how important the 7th is. This is why it's so blessed, sanctified. It represents your rest. Also, in the book of Genesis, the 5th chapter, turn there. Because not only the 7th year, the 7th day, even the 7th month, and I'm going to show you that last. In the book of Genesis 5, watch this. And we're going to read starting at the 25th verse. And it says, Methuselah lived 187 years and begot Lamech. Now, who is Methuselah? Well, Methuselah is the 7th born, the 7th generation after Adam. Enoch was the 6th, and Enoch had Methuselah, which is the 7th. And watch what it says about this Methuselah. And Methuselah lived after he begot Lamech 782 years and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. Now, why is that important to know? Because little do people know Methuselah is the oldest living person in the scriptures. And why? Because he's the 7th. And Yahweh has already told you that the 7th is blessed. The 7th is sanctified, set apart. The 7th is a time of rest, and he will bring things to an end. And the oldest living person in the scripture, when Yahweh brought him to the end, it was the 7th. And his name was Methuselah, who was very blessed. And the last scripture is in the book of Exodus 34. Let us turn there. And this is what it says. In the book of Exodus 34, and we're going to read the 21st and the 22nd verse. And it says, 6 days thou shalt work, But on the seventh day thou shalt rest. In any time and in harvest thou shalt rest. And thou shalt observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of wheat harvest, because that's in the beginning of the year. And the feast of ingathering at the year's end. And what is the year's end according to the scriptures? Well, the year's end according to the scriptures is the seventh month, because that's when the feast of ingathering is. And what is the feast of ingathering? The Feast of Tabernacles, which comes in the seventh month at the year's end. So even the seventh month represents Yahweh's end, Yahweh's rest, something that Yahweh has blessed and set apart. Yahweh's purpose of seven. Until our next program, Yahweh love you, and so do I. Shalom. Yahweh is righteous. Yahweh is holy. And let Yahweh continually be magnified.